Well, I suppose the key part of my vocation was finally realising that I needed to stop running from my vocation. I'd sort of always suspected and always kind of known that God had a plan in my life and that my life was going to be directed in that area. However, I refused to look at that for many years, probably about 10 years of my life really, and I ran away from that and lived another life. But finally, after finding myself in a very empty space, after many years of living a life away from God and living a life that was where God was absent, after about 10 years of living that life, I was empty, and it was at that point that I found I was able to sort of reconnect with God, and I was able to I was able to hear God's call in my life for the first time after about 10 years, and that was in Wellington, living in Wellington, where I sort of had a conversion of what I call a conversion of the heart and a conversion of the mind. Conversion of the mind happened through a reading of people like G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis, Thomas Merton, and St. Augustine as the four key ones, but lots of other ones as well. And then the conversion of heart came through reconnecting with the Mass, actually, and coming here to St. Mary of the Angels during my lunch hour. I was working at the Wellington Regional Council at the time, and I just started to come to Mass every lunch hour, just sort of accidentally actually, and then I just slowly but surely just found myself sort of falling in love with Jesus, especially in the Eucharist. And that was a really big part of my journey. And when you combine those two things, the sort of conversion of heart that came through the Mass and the conversion of my intellect, which came through a lot of reading, I then was open to hearing God's call, which actually came to me through my sister ringing me up one day when I was at home and sort of saying, look, I keep praying for you, Matthew, and I keep getting this word, the Lord keeps giving me this sort of word in it, and I don't know what you're going to say, but, have you ever thought about being a priest? And I thought, oh, no, I want to get married, and I don't know. But there was something about it that just struck a chord with me, and the next day when I was at the computer reading about vocation and celibacy and all that sort of thing, I read an article written by someone about how celibacy it's not just a matter of, I always viewed it as not getting married, but actually it was spoken of as a great love for, or an availability, and giving your love to many people and giving your love to God in a very singular way, which had always kind of attracted me, but I'd always been scared of it because I thought I wanted to get married. But when I read this, I suddenly had this I had a great experience of God's love for me sitting right there at my computer, right at that moment. And I had a deep sense of God's call and a deep sense of God sort of saying to me, finally, Matthew, you understand your vocation, because basically I've been running from it for about 10 years. And the only way I can describe that feeling, I almost burst into tears sitting at my desk, but the only way I can describe that that feeling was I felt God was smiling at me, which was a very it was a beautiful experience actually, and I've never forgotten it. And it was the funny thing was I was meeting a friend of mine that night actually at a youth hostel place. She drove a bus, a tourist bus, and I went there and I was determined not to tell anyone because I was thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. I can't honestly seriously do this, but I was quite excited about it at the same time. And she kept saying to me, "Are you all right? You seem all right?" And I literally could not keep it in. I had to tell her, and I told her. And I said, "I think I'm going to become a priest." And she laughed, and I laughed, and then I proceeded to tell her that, of course, there's many they probably won't accept me, and I probably won't last, and I listed all the reasons why it wouldn't work. But I knew in my heart. I knew in my heart that this is what I was going to do. And so here I am.